Today's unSeminary podcast episode is brought to you by Church Community Builder. I love how these guys help church leaders make and grow disciples by providing software and coaching focused on improving operational effectiveness. Church Community Builder provides leaders like me with insights into engagement of our church community, helping us close the gaps that allow people to slip away unnoticed. Visit churchcommunitybuilder.com to learn more.
Welcome to the unSeminary podcast. Are you looking for practical ministry help to drive your ministry further, faster? Have a sinking feeling that your ministry training didn't prepare you for the real world? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others in pursuit of stuff that we wish they had taught in seminary. Buckle up and let's get started with this week's unSeminary podcast.
Well, hey everybody, happy Thursday. Welcome to the podcast. My name's Rich, the host around these parts. So glad that you've decided to spend some time with us today. I know that this weekend, you may be a little bit nervous because you're like, gosh, we're heading into the weekend. There's a lot coming up at your church. I'm honored and privileged that you would take time out to listen to us today. I know you've got a lot of things you could be doing with your time, whether you're, maybe you're out running this morning or doing something, getting ready for this today. And I'm just thankful that you would take some time to be with us today. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. I think we're going to learn a lot. This is going to be interesting, kind of dive on a topic that's near and dear to my heart. We've got Mark Lunsford with us. He is at Hope Fellowship. Hope is one of those churches that you really should get a chance to get to know. It's one of the fastest growing churches in the country. They started, it's kind of a little bit of that classic story. Frisco, Texas started with 51 people in 2000 and has grown now over 5,000 people, expanding, 3 campuses. Rumor has it they're working on thinking through it. The next one, maybe we're breaking some news there today. Great church. You really should be following them. And we're just glad to have you on the show today, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Hey, great to be here. Excited to join the conversation.
Nice. Now, if you, how would you describe your role when people stop you and say, "Hey, Mark, what do you do?" What do you say?
Well, people ask me that all the time because my title's executive pastor, and they're like, "We don't see you on the stage. In fact, we see you kind of around every now and then." Of course, with Multisite, yes. I'm traveling to different sites, so I'm not there all the time at their campus. And so they're like, "So what is it that you do?" And so I've had a difficult time trying to explain it, but what I'm always doing for Hope Fellowship, and I partner with our lead pastor, John Mackenzie, and my role is to help him to think through what's next. What are we doing next? What's our next step? Mm-hmm. So from the time when I first arrived at Hope, when we were just running 1,000 to where now have grown a lot, over 5,000 and 6,000. Mm-hmm. It's been a lot of steps along the journey. So I'm always trying to think about what's next. And I'm thinking about what's next in the areas of staffing and hiring. What's next in the areas of ministry? How are we expanding ministry? What's next in the areas of finance? And I serve as our CFO for our organization. And so it's just all of those areas of what's next. And then I coach and mentor and lead our staff. Mm-hmm. And so primarily now I'm mentoring and leading the leaders of our who lead the staff, the pastors on the ground and the leaders on the ground. So it's just been an evolutionary role, and it's kind of hard to describe. But the easiest way is to just say I'm always thinking about what's next.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. That's a good way to describe it. I know I serve a similar role at our church, and I sometimes say I feel like I'm a professional poker. I'm kind of poking us to where are we going next. What's hey, what about this? What about that? Maybe we should be thinking through these kinds of issues. Right. Maybe we should be worrying about that now. You lead a multi-site staff, and today we're going to kind of try to dive deep a little bit into the staffing issues. You guys, why don't you give us kind of a capsulation of your multi-site story? Kind of how, give us a sense of why you got into multi-site and what does it look like today, and then we can pivot into what you're learning from, a multi-site staff point of view.
Well, our church was, as you mentioned, it was launched in 2000. It was launched portable. Mm-hmm. And in 2005, we moved into our very first building, which was a 500-seat auditorium in Frisco, on the east side of Frisco. And after a couple of years of growth, we actually felt the need to expand that. We have a 9-acre place right there on the east side of Frisco. And so we expanded that to a 1,000-seat auditorium that opened up in 2009. And, God just continue to allow us to grow. Mm-hmm. And so around 2010, 2011, it was obvious that we knew that our mission was to reach as many people that God would allow to come into our community, and our community was continuing to grow. And so we kind of were at a crossroads. Do we relocate and get a bigger site, or do we start to explore this idea of multi-site? And honestly, for us, multi-site was not. I know kind of right now it's a very normal, natural, and in a way it's kind of trendy to think about. And but for us, it was just not what our experience was. So we really thought and prayed hard about it. And but in the end, we just really felt, okay, you know what? I think God is calling us to expand by being local to different areas and really being able to reach that community better. And so that's when we made the decision to go multi-site. And one of the things when we first started thinking about multi-site, the places we went to ask them about it, a lot of them would say, one of our first big mistakes was going too small. And so we said, oh man, we're going to go big, And so we actually ended up our first.
Well, it's Texas after all, right?
It's Texas.
That joke was set itself up. Come on.
Our first multi-site is in McKinney, Texas, and that's our neighboring town from Frisco. And what we did was we bought a former Albertsons, and it's right on two basically highways, the corner of two highways in a very highly trafficked area. And there's 50,000 square feet, and we remodeled that, and that's our first one. We launched that in August 2012. And when we launched that, we sent several hundred people out there, plus then they started to impact their community. But back at our original site, we continued to grow, and we knew we were going to have to do something quickly. So another Albertsons on the west side of Frisco came available, so we purchased that, and that opened in December of 2013. So right now we're at three sites, and it's a kind of unique situation where our physical campuses are similar sizes.
Yeah.
We do our production site is at our original location, and then it's a live video at our other two sites. We have campus pastors at each site and full staff from children's, students, worship, it's grow ministry, etc. at each site. And then we support that through a central team. So each department has a lead from students, children's, worship, communications, missions, and then we have the campus staff right on the ground.
Yeah, so you're looking for the next Albertsons to go bankrupt,
We're kind of running out of Albertsons. And
Okay.
you know what? As we've done three, now we're open to different models. It's not going to have to always look the same.
Right.
And right now, that's what we're praying about. You kind of mentioned. Well, right now we're just praying about, okay, what does it look like going forward? We're praying about, do we expand our original campus again if we possibly can? We're just limited in our acreage right there, and then, or is there another site? And then what's the best way to leverage that? And right now, we're trying to move people off of that Frisco East site to then allow that to continue to grow back. But it's also a challenge because 3 years later, getting leadership at that campus from a volunteer standpoint and doing that quickly, we're still working through that. We're still trying to figure it out and learn how to do it best. And so we're continuing to learn and grow. And I've been in the ministry for a long time, and you always think, oh, well, I'm going to know how to do it at some point, and I'm still looking for that point.
Still waiting for that. Well, let's talk about maybe some of the things you're learning from a staff point of view. As you're kind of leading the staff from a multi-site point of view, it is more complex, as a leader who's been in it for a while. Same thing. I feel like I'm constantly learning, trying to learn. And so what are some of those things that you've kind of learned about leading your staff in a multi-site church that maybe are a little different that from when you were in a mono-site church?
Well, the biggest thing is that when we were one site, it was much easier for the culture and the DNA to just infuse into our staff. First of all, you have fewer of them, so it's easier to have one-on-one conversations with them. But also, they're around you more. They're around the leaders more, the lead pastor, myself, maybe other leaders that have been in the ministry a long time. So one thing that I've found is just vital is to seed that new multi-site with the DNA and the culture that has been there from the beginning. So I think that's important. Now, at the same time, like for us, we weren't able to fully staff a multi-site, none of our multi-sites with people that we already had, because we needed to, we had to pull some people in from the outside because we needed their experience. We didn't have everybody ready to go. But at the same time, we needed to make sure that we seeded these sites with people who had been on our staff. So that's one of the things about it. The other thing about it that we're still learning is that, and we're trying to figure out that balance between, like, for instance, we're one church in multiple sites. So what does it look like when a staff member moves from one site to another site? Is that a negative? Is it a positive? How do we help people to understand the positive around that? So that's like further down the road. But at the beginning, seeding that with people that have your DNA, that have your culture, that have been around, that have, as a leader, whether the lead pastor, the vision of the church, their heart, and they can communicate that. So when you're bringing in new staff, they're not going to be around the ones that have been there forever as much. So you need to be able to help infuse that DNA.
How are you practically infusing that DNA? What does that look like for you? What are the kind of tools or approaches that you're using to kind of ensure, particularly those new staff, are getting?
So one thing, our central leadership team last year, we got together because we started to recognize this. What happened was we knew that we were going to have to seed people, but then after a couple of years, after you bring in more people, and now we did our third site. We recognize that there's a learning curve. And how can we make that learning curve of here's who we are and here's what your experience has been? How can we close that gap? So we got together and we said, let's create culture statements. These are the culture statements that say, if you come to our staff, this is who we are, this is what you can expect. And so we ended up coming together and we created 6 of them. And I'll just run through them real quick.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
The first one is choose your lens, which are your lens as if like your glasses, because you can look at things through a lot of different lenses. So we want to choose the lens that we look at. And for us, that's really one thing is trust. Choose the lens of trust when you're talking to other staff members, because trust that they have the goodwill of the mission of hope in mind, but also there's positivity. There's change that's going to be happening. How can you choose a lens of positivity as you're going forward? The second culture statement was healthy you equals healthy us. And one of the things that is John and I, our lead pastor and I, is we have talked for years about leading a church and impacting not only a community but even beyond. What would that look like if we could do that while having a healthy staff? And in our experience, I mean, we kind of look back and we say, I don't even know if we have seen that happen where a mega church or even a larger than a mega church has a healthy staff. And so if we didn't think it was possible, we wouldn't be trying it. So and I'm not sure if we're 100% successful, but what we're trying to do is say, hey, we want you as a staff member to be healthy. And so we try to put tools in their hands, and we try to mentor them towards that. But healthy you equals healthy us, because if you as the staff member are not healthy, whether that's spiritually staying connected in your spiritual disciplines or physically or mentally, if you're not healthy in all these ways, then how can we as a church be healthy? So that's what we do. And then our third statement is we is greater than me. And we just like the fact that we're a team. And you know what? Together, we're going to be better than doing it on our own. So yes, I might think I have a great idea, but you know what? It gets even better when it's around the team. And so we all have to kind of think that way. So you might think you have a great idea, but you know what? Let's listen to some collective wisdom and let's do it together. Togetherness and being a team, that's a really important value for us. Fourth one for us is make it better. And we just want, as a staff member, I want you to be thinking about how you can make it better. How can you, whatever you're doing, and there's simple things that we think about, like you're walking by and you pick up a piece of trash that is on the ground, because that's our church. That's not just for operations or facilities to come by and fix that. I hope they fix that. Well, I hope they do that. Or even if you see something in a ministry that, you know what, if they did this, it could make it better. We'll go to that leader and share that with them. Not out of, hey, I'd like to help you do your job, but man, I want us to make it better, because when we work together, we is greater than me, and we can together. So that's cool. Those are other things. And so the fifth thing is live the mission. Okay. And our mission is love, connect, grow, and serve. And so that's not just something we preach to our congregation. That's something that we have to live. And then when you're in the business of ministry, sometimes it's easy to say, well, I clock in, I clock out, I do this. And they do the but
Yes.
no, how do I do it? Because am I in a life group? Am I in a small group? Am I in a home group? Am I going to Bible study? Because I want them to grow, but how am I doing that? And sometimes we think, well, I do that, that's my job, but what are we doing personally to love, connect, grow, and also serve? How am I serving? Maybe my role allows me to serve, whether that's in an outreach ministry or like I said, in a home group or something like that. And then the last thing is towel over the arm. We just want us to have a culture where we serve one another, put a towel over our arm. And so those are the 6 culture statements. And so that's how now we've tried to close that gap between when somebody's coming on to when they're part of our team, to where they can just get connected and understand better.
I don't want people to miss what you just did there. So this is incredibly important for you as you lead, particularly a multi-site church, but any church.
Sure.
As your team grows, you have to, those things that are implicit have to become explicit. So it takes time to kind of step back and say, what is it about the kind of people we want to create? What is it that's important to us? And how do we make that explicit? And you've got to be super clear. You know, one of the things that just as a journey longer in leadership, we have to articulate it in as clear a manner as possible. And I love what you're doing there with those kind of 6, values or 6 approaches to the way you lead. And those become handles that then you just pound all the time with your team and reward and say, wow, like, man, that's a great towel on the arm moment you just did there. That's a great, this is one of those we's greater than me moments. I really thought this was a really good thing, but then Bob came along with this other deal and man, I'm so glad we're working together. Isn't it great to be on a team where we's greater than me? I'm not even on your team and I can repeat that stuff back.
Well, as an example of that, last night we had a ministry team, our weekend ministry team, ushers, greeters, parkers, from all 3 campuses got together for a training, and the leader of that sent out an email to our whole staff that said, wow, thank you communications team for creating this great brochure that took our content and made it look good so that we can make it better for our volunteers. And so that was an example of celebrating some of those things team to team, what that doesn't necessarily get seen by the rest of the church. If you're a student ministry or children's ministry, you wouldn't have any idea about that. But then that reinforces to them, you know what? That communications team does that for us as well. And what a great overall team we have. So it's just that reinforcement of communication.
Now, when we opened our first campus here at Liquid, so I've been at 2 different multi-site churches, 3 different multi-site churches. One was in Canada called the Meeting House. Then here I've been in Jersey now 6 years. We started a campus before I started on staff. We got too far ahead of ourselves. We hired a very large team, and that caused us some problems. How have you guys kind of wrestled with those dynamics as you've started out? Your physical spaces are the same size. How has that kind of impacted, you as you've stepped forward?
Well, you know what? As church leaders, we have a lot of faith, right? So we were like, man, we're going to open this campus. It's going to be the largest, church in the world, and so we need to have a lot of people to help us in that. And so what I've learned from experience as well is that you can get ahead of yourself. You can say, for instance, we launched our first campus, and I thought, well, this is going to be a certain size in 6 months. I want to prepare for that. I want to err on the side of we're ready for it versus we're not ready for it. So we actually probably hired about 2 people too many for what ended up happening. And then what I learned about the 8 or 9 months in is that they were kind of bored. Like there was not enough for them to do because of the size of that. So what I learned is, you can get ahead of yourself. It's easier to add than it is to subtract. And for us, we moved some people around into different areas in the organization. But it's easier to add. So don't get ahead of yourself. We want to prepare for growth, but you don't staff as if you're already grown.
Yes.
Because that's not guaranteed. And but here's what else I learned through that. Even though the expectations maybe didn't meet, or the experience didn't meet my expectations, what I had to recognize is, well, the people that we're ministering to, those are who God has chosen for us to minister to. So we got to do the very best job. And so what we do is we just keep doing our best day in, day out, and one conversation at a time. If we have a visitor, well, that's an opportunity for us to grow. So let's have a great conversation with them. Let's connect with them better. How can we get them to understand who we are as a church? How can we also get our people to continue to be inviting their friends and neighbors, and understanding what the mission of Hope is. So
yeah, I think this is a good lesson. I think particularly I realize it's somewhat of a gold-plated problem in a fast-growing church, but we've experienced a similar deal where the way I've articulated internally is, we have to make sure that we're not applying magical thinking, that our planning isn't connected to reality, and I think one of the things that can be good, particularly for staffing for growth, is to benchmark what is happening at your church and what has happened at other churches when they've gone multi-site, and try to find some dynamic equivalents where you're like, here's this other church. Hope would be a great example of that. Lean into that story. What was their growth actually like in the first year, second year? And, find half a dozen churches out there who are experiencing a similar thing, and find out what could that look like for you?
Yeah.
Rather than thinking, because we did the same thing where it was like, well, this is going to grow as fast as our first campus, which I frankly haven't seen. That although there is a growth spurt that takes place when you launch new campuses, sometimes it's a little different. And so, and you don't want to, put undue expectation on the new campus team and all that. You can get into all kinds of issues there. This has been a fantastic conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to share on the kind of, healthy multi-site staff dynamics before we shift into the next part of the, as we kind of wrap up the episode?
Yeah, there's two things I want to share. First of all, this was, as I've been thinking about our conversation and staffing in general, because we're in the hiring mode right now. There's something that can be discouraging, because sometimes you can feel like, well, I know how in the world are we going to find the right people to come and partner with us? And so I was reading this passage, and it was encouraging to me, and it's a little bit of a stretch, but I wanted to share it with you guys as well.
That's why you're not a preaching pastor? Is that what we're
saying? That's why I'm not a preaching pastor. Yeah. So
just kidding.
In 2 Kings chapter 6, Elisha is the king of Aram has sent his armies to surround Elisha and his servant. And so the servant wakes up the next morning, and he goes out of the tent and looks around and says, "Oh my goodness, the army has surrounded us. What are we going to do? How are we going to survive this?" And I think, and this is the stretch part, but I look at that, and when I'm trying to find staff members, I look around and like, man, there's where are they? I don't know. I can't find them. I can't even find the right people. And but then Elisha comes out and he says, "God, I just pray that you would open his eyes." And when he opened his eyes, he saw on the hillside that was filled with horses and chariots of fire. And so what that encouraged me was like, you know what, God, I think God was speaking to me and saying, you are only seeing what you can see with your human eyes. Right. But if you can see how I see, and see that I've prepared so many people, and it's so much bigger than what you think. So I just want to encourage those of you that are trying to hire staff that God has the right people, and He's going to bring them at the right time. And I have to encourage myself in that too. And speaking of hiring, we're always hiring. We're hiring for a children's pastor. We're hiring for a videographer. We're hiring for a addiction recovery pastor. And you can find out information about that at hopefellowship.net/jobs.
Nice. Well, that's great. What a great plug. I'd love for people to check that out. Hope Fellowship is a great organization. You get to work with a nice guy like Mark.
This is the unSeminary podcast. Stuff you wish they taught in seminary.
All right. Well, we're going to jump into the lightning round. That's the part of the episode where we ask similar questions to everybody that's on the show, just to kind of wrap up the episode. Today, we're super excited to have Mark Lunsford with us from Hope Fellowship in Frisco, Texas, a great church that you really should be chasing down and following. God's doing some interesting things through this ministry, and I'd love for you to get to know them a little bit better. Mark, what is an online resource that you're using these days that's helping you in your ministry?
Well, I'm going to share with you a technology resource. It's not necessarily online, but this is something that we've used. And what I love is when our team is able to be creative with resources that are not necessarily right in the box thinking. So a lot of times we think about how can we get distributed video? And like if you're in one location, you're like, how can we wire all these TVs together to make sure that they're showing the same thing, whether that's distributed announcements or things like that. For us, we just recently upgraded what we call our welcome centers, where visitors come and connect and learn a little bit more about Hope. And we wanted to have a loop of video playing at each one of those. These are at our different sites. So how can we distribute that? So one of the things we did is we put a Roku box behind the TV, and we actually had created a video. So in those cases, we stuck a USB port into that, and there's an app called Nowhere USB, or a channel called Nowhere USB. And so now the staff, they just go in there, they turn on the Roku, they click that Nowhere USB app, and now it plays that loop, and it's just great quality. And we didn't have to try to send that video from another place and get cabling from one. It's just right there, local to the TV.
Oh, that's very cool.
And it's less clunky than a DVD player. And so, but also now that you have that Roku player there, what we've done in the past is we do on-site Bible studies and classes, and so sometimes we want to show an announcement to every class. But instead of distributing a DVD and all of that, now since we have a Roku player on those boxes, we can have them log on to the Vimeo channel where we've already uploaded a video, and they can show that before their class and that kind of thing. So cool. Roku boxes, I tell you, it's been a really good technology hack and a way to make it simpler for distributed video.
Very cool. So that's Nowhere USB. If people are want to look that up, just you can search that and find that online. That's very cool. Very cool. Love that. What's a book you've read in the last 6 months that's kind of shaping your ministry or thinking?
Well, a friend of mine wrote a book. His name is Aubrey McGowan, and he wrote a book called Mastering the Art of Trust. And as we've been talking about staffing, and he was on our staff for a number of years, and the whole point of the book is the fact that as we lead, that having trust and mastering the art of trust is so important. And so I just love the concept of the book. In fact, for church leaders, there's a trust assessment that you can give to your staff, and Aubrey is just an incredible leader, and you can see more about the book and learn about what he does for churches and organizations at aubreymcgowan.com. And he's a great leader, and I really believe in him, and I'm excited for what he's able to bring to other organizations. So that's a book that I was just really proud when he gave me the opportunity to read it before he sent it out, and I just was like, you know what, this is something that will be very helpful to a lot of people like me as executive pastor, so wanted to share that with you guys.
Very cool, very cool. What's another ministry you're kind of looking to kind of inspire you these days?
I've been inspired for the last number of years by LifeChurch.tv, and I know they changed their name to Life.Church.
We all have to change our name, the way we talk about them.
But they were so helpful as we were starting our multi-site journey. In fact, they were when we were starting, they were on their 15th campus, and they were like, "This is kind of our prototype." And we were like, "Well, man, if you've learned through 15 campuses," so we kind of took the model of their prototype campus as a guide for some of our campuses. But what is so inspiring to me is their just focus on what they do, and also their stewardship focus is a real inspiration to me. Just the way that they decide to spend their resources and how they do that. They're very focused on it, and they're just an inspiration to me.
Very cool. If you could get 15 minutes with any leader alive, who would that leader be and why?
Boy, I had to think through that a little bit, but I'd say Jeff Bezos of Amazon.
Nice.
I think what they are doing...
I'd love to sit in with you because I think this is a great one. I love Jeff.
What they are doing is just so disruptive. And for the last 15, 16 years, as they have really revolutionized distribution of how to buy stuff and get it to you, and how to read stuff, and how to, now I just, honestly, I don't buy or any more physical media or books because I don't have a place to put them as much, so and the fact that I can have that all in one device, but some of the other things that they're thinking about, how do we get the other day we ordered something through Prime Now, and it gets there in 2 hours, and then you can see the person that's driving to your house. It's pretty amazing. And but the other thing about what's inspiring about him as a leader is it doesn't always just work. As a leader, you have to understand that you're going to try things and they're not going to work. So how do you respond to that? And learning about resilience and how do you respond when things don't exactly work the way that you expect them to, that's inspiring to me. And so I'd enjoy sitting in with him.
Yeah, they're incredible. And, I think Jeff particularly is an incredible leader. I would echo that. As a fellow bald guy, I'd love to, always good to see another bald guy, make it in the world.
Well, I'm not far behind.
You're not, well, I don't know about that. You still have hair on your head, which is good. But, the thing I find fascinating about them is, there's this whole e-commerce side of what they do, but then there's their whole Amazon Web Services services business, which, you could argue like this, the podcast you're listening to is hosted on an Amazon server. So much of the undergirding of what's happening really in the kind of innovation side of the web is being driven by, is all hosted on their servers. And it was a fairly revolutionary idea when they got into it. And it's become the undergirding of so much innovation, which is, fascinating. That's great. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show today, Mark. I'm sure, you're a busy guy leading a growing church. When you're, just looking to kick back, relax a little bit, what is it you do to, just have fun?
Well, as a parent, I know a lot of people that connect on this are parents, and so we spend a lot of time just managing what our kids are doing.
Yes.
And right now, I have 3 girls, and the youngest is going to be 17 in just a couple of weeks, a couple of months. But and so we're in a new season where they're all working, they all have access to cars, and so they're gone a lot of the time. And so my wife and we're finding ourselves like, okay, well, they don't need us, and so what do we do? So we're having to learn what it means to what did we do before we had kids, and so we're kind of in like a pre-empty nest season. So what we've done is we've just done a lot more of going to concerts. The other day we just saw there was a Greek festival in Dallas, so we're like, hey, let's just go to that. So we're finding new things to do, and sometimes, but you have to be intentional, because it's easy just to feel like, oh, you know what, I'm kind of tired, I'm just going to sit here, and then after 3 or 4 nights of just sitting around, you're like, man, we got to do something else. So,
very cool.
So we're doing some of that. We're going with a friend of mine to about a few seat tickets to the Dallas Mavericks this season. So,
very cool.
But we have ability to do that now, and so it's a new season we're starting to explore, and we're excited.
Interesting. About that. Well, that's cool. That's we're in the season before that. Our kids are in the coming into teenage land. I now have 2 teenagers in our house, and so that's a fun phase to be in for sure.
Well, Mark, you will survive. Every season is only temporary, but also you have to enjoy each.
Yeah, I love it. I actually, there's challenging moments in it, but I actually love it. I think it's it's obviously different and complex. So, Mark, I really appreciate you being on the show today. If people want to get in touch with you or with Hope Fellowship, how can they do that?
Well, with Hope Fellowship, our website is hopefellowship.net, and you can kind of see all that we're doing and read our story there and watch our messages online, that type of thing. For myself, my Twitter handle is just Mark Lunsford, Lunsford, and I'm not on there very much, but you can do that. But if anybody is a church leader, or if somebody has questions or they want to connect with me, they can feel free to email me at mark@hopefellowship.net.
Very cool. Thanks so much, Mark. Thanks for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's unSeminary podcast. Don't be shy. We'd love to connect. Check out unSeminary Inbox. You can sign up at unSeminary.com, and we'll send you helpful training resources every week. Plus, you'll gain immediate access to our exclusive members area with tons of resources you can use. Connect with Rich on Twitter @RichBirch or through email, rich@unseminary.com. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode at unseminary.com. It includes links to what we talked about today and more. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Did you enjoy today's episode? Drop by iTunes and leave a review. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's unSeminary podcast. Join us next week when we'll learn more stuff we wish they taught in seminary.